Good morning, good morning. Let me just share the stream. So if you come on, I will be just sharing the stream in Teams, so bear with me 1 second. Hi, Grace. You okay, lovely? Morning, Shan. You okay, lovely? It's always like Wednesday's my favourite day of the week because it means I get to see you guys. Thanks, Fletcher, for your contribution to my lesson. Right, I'll just give people just a couple of seconds just to get on, and then while I write consequences on the board, and then we will get going. Oh, I'm brilliant. Thank you, Shan. I'm loving life. Bought some new skincare the other day, so I've started that today to try and sort this out, particularly the scarring. Hi, Braden. Right, shall we get crack-a-lacking? Shall we get cracking? So, plan is today we're going to look at the consequences of the Berlin Wall and what happened. Okay, that's not to me. We're going to look at the consequences of the Berlin Wall today, so that then on Friday I can go over another type of question, which I think you'll find dead easy. So today's lesson won't be overly long because the consequences are pretty straightforward. And then the plan is next week, because I'm thinking ahead or trying to, is that we'll do just a bit of a recap of what we've done, make sure we go over it, because obviously it's difficult with me being this side of the camera and not having you in front of me, because I can't do that constant like questioning and things. So we'll have a little bit of a recap next week as well, and I'll try and do like a bit of a lesson on Teams rather than like this, so that we can have something that's a bit more interactive. Okay, I was reading and I don't understand. I'm told. Right, let's have a slurp of tea and let's get this cracking. All right then. So let's quickly recap the Berlin Wall situation. Let me pull that down slightly. There we go. So we have Eisenhower and Khrushchev. There is this new age of kind of peaceful coexistence. They're trying to talk to one another. Hi, Sam. And everything is going, relatively well until 1958, because up until this point, morning, Uncle Joe. Up until this point, from kind of 1956 on, we're all good. There's been a lot of people leaving the East to go to the West. There's this brain drain in Berlin where the skilled people are moving over from the East to the West. And that is leaving the Soviet Union in a very difficult position because it's making their economy stall. As a direct result, Berlin is becoming quite a sticky point for Khrushchev. Khrushchev makes an ultimatum in 1958. Please excuse me. There we go. He makes an ultimatum in 1958 saying you leave you leave Berlin or else, Uncle Joe, freaking West. Eisenhower's not quite prepared to give up that easily, says that he will meet with Khrushchev in 1958, which they do, and they have this like little summit. It doesn't mean anything. They don't set anything in stone. They agree that in 1960 that they will meet up in Paris for a proper summit. So as we're going into the Paris summit in May 1960, there is a slight issue that 9 days before, a U-2 spy plane has been going over the Soviet Union, and it is shot down by Soviet troops. They capture the pilot Gary Powers, and they parade him in front of Soviet people on television. God, that was a total Miss Martinism, wasn't it? And they cause a lot of tension and victory over this particular capture, I suppose. Eisenhower is not happy about this at all and the way it's been handled. And Khrushchev comes into the Paris summit saying, I've got Gary Powers. I think you should promise not to spy. And I think you should apologise. And Eisenhower's not having it, not at all. And they've reached no agreement, so much so that Khrushchev ends up storming out of the Paris summit. Then there is an election in the USA, similar to what's happening this year. There is an election, and Eisenhower has served his time as president. He cannot run again, and a young JFK comes into power. Now, just to remind you, stereotypically, the Americans elect old white men. Now, JFK, I even think this is still true, I did Google it the other day, remains the youngest president ever to be elected. KFC, that's the one, Breadhead. I'm going to start calling you that now. He remains to this day being the youngest president elected. So Khrushchev's rubbing his hands together, is like, right, I can get what I want in terms of Berlin. When it comes to Kennedy, he's a pushover, he's inexperienced, I'm good. What Khrushchev fails to appreciate then with JFK is that he's come from a political family. He has got a lot of pedigree in terms of that, but also he is quite anti-communist and has got a lot of experience in terms of dealing with situations due to his father being an ambassador. So JFK reasserts the Truman Doctrine, increases the defense budget, and tells Khrushchev, you are not having Berlin, so back off, buddy. Khrushchev then responds by building a wall, and it gets more and more intricate and deadly as the years go on. It initially starts out as a very temporary structure of just a few wooden posts and some barbed wire, but ends up being this whole death trap of a big permanent structure with watchtowers and guard dogs and sleepers to prevent cars going on, and landmines and machine guns, and becomes this death strip. And that brings us up to today's lesson. So what I wanted to do first was create a mind map on the different ways a war would have changed lives. So thinking about how people were living on both sides of the wall. Remember that the east could go to the west could go to the east. Families lived in different sections. So I have a little mini mind map of all the ways that people's lives, so the ordinary person like you and me, not like Uncle Joe in the big politics. Yeah, landmines. They put landmines on the death strip so that if you got past things, you wouldn't get past the landmine. You'd die. That's the legacy you left. So yeah, all the different ways that the people were affected, like the ordinary people. What sort of things might not you be able to do if you can't cross the wall? Thinking about that. Then I want you to find 3 creative ways people tried to cross the wall. There are some brilliant ways. So have a look at that. And try and give me as many reasons of why people would want to cross that wall. All right. Why would they want to be on the other side? So moving into then the impact of this wall, the consequences. Well, it leads to one big thing. Should we go for pink? Let's do it. Okay, so it leads to a standoff between, oh, look at the wonky line, a standoff between the USA and the USSR. Now, they have been in sort of a standoff for quite some time, but now it becomes a more physical thing. They've had this war of words for a while, but when it comes to Berlin, there are US troops stationed at the different checkpoints, and then on one side, and then on the opposite side, there are Soviet troops waiting as well. Okay, and it gets to a point where, here we go, that both sides place their tanks either side of a checkpoint. That is where you could get through if you were official. It was very hard to get through these checkpoints. But if I just show you here, there we go. So these are, I'm not sure which is which, if I'm really honest. Does it say? Yeah. So these are the US tanks in the foreground here. And they are standing off with the Soviet tanks just there at the back. Let me just show you that a little bit better and a little bit more still for you. So the people of Berlin could really see now that they were in the middle of a real argument between the USA and the USSR. Now, by placing the tanks on either side, it was this real possibility that a war may break out between the USA and the USSR. Now, Kennedy was very aware that, you know, it still was only kind of 15 years since the last war. That wasn't a long period of time. They did not want to go back to a war because now they've got that element of nuclear weapons, and Kennedy did want to avoid that. And to be fair to Khrushchev, I don't really think Khrushchev wanted a war either. He just wanted to get Berlin. So both of them worked behind the scenes to then agree that if the Soviets removed their troops and their tanks, the US would do the same. So it got to this point where it ends the standoff, but they inch back very, very slowly until they are no longer directly facing each other for this massive, massive standoff. Now, as you can imagine, then, if you've got a standoff going on, and although you've got this agreement at the end that they are going to end the standoff, inevitably, it's like when you've got one of your sort of like friends or your frenemies, however you want to do it, or even a sibling, you have that, still have got that level of tension between you, okay? That atmosphere that you can't quite put your finger on, that thing you're like, everything's okay now, we've worked it out, but there's that little bit of resentment left. And that's what happens with the USA and the USSR. There is a definite increase in tension. Okay. So although they've resolved it this time, sorry about my dogs, even though they've resolved the conflict initially and there is no longer the standoff, actually what happens is there's still that tension, there's still that there's a definite level of mistrust. Okay, so they no longer trust each other, and there is that kind of, it's almost, hang on, let me see if I can do it. It's almost like now the world, or am I steady enough? The answer is probably not. The world is sort of on this little balancing act, and if it tips one way, it'll fall. If it tips the other way, it'll fall. So the world is balancing at a very, very fine act now. And that's what's politically a major consequence. It could lead there be a bigger flashpoint. Okay. So what happens then in terms for the German people? What's the impact on them? What's the consequence for them? Well, escaping from the east to the west became near impossible, very, very difficult. Some people, I'm not going to I'm going to give you some ideas and help. Tunneled, swum like along the border, around on the canals. People would jump out windows, you name it. Some managed to climb the wall, hoping that the guards would have a poor aim. Perfectly balanced, like all things should be. Love it. But lots of people lost their lives trying to get across the wall. Okay, so that did mean that a lot of families were split up. Families and friends couldn't see each other for years. Travel restrictions were in there. So, the Germans felt very let down by the Soviet Union because they hadn't got, felt like they were under a new dictatorship. Sorry, Stalin. They felt that they were under a new dictatorship, and actually that it was just, although it was different to the Nazis in terms of discrimination, obviously we know about the minorities, the Germans felt they were being all discriminated against. It didn't matter whether they were Jewish, black, white, Aryan, in inverted commas, everyone was being punished by the Soviet Union. But they also kind of felt a little bit let down by Kennedy, that Kennedy hadn't done anything to help them, that he'd just sort of left them and abandoned them, and that he hadn't gone to war for them. Another consequence then. One consequence that you might find a little bit strange, but I don't know, I don't, because you can see why, is Khrushchev feels that he has won. He feels that there is a element of victory because he's the construction of the wall has pushed the West out of the eastern side of Berlin, and he felt that he'd beaten Kennedy and now was in a strong position to outmaneuver his rival. The flow of refugees had stopped. The economic crisis was slowly evaporating. Khrushchev said that the wall was guarding the gates of social paradise. And although Khrushchev had failed to remove the West from Berlin entirely, he had, in his opinion, felt that he'd eased the tension, he'd ended the crisis and tension in Europe by adding this wall, and got what he wanted to a certain extent. I'm so sorry. So, as you can imagine, here we go, another consequence. She's given them to you. She gives them to you every while. So we've had the Iron Curtain in 1946 by Churchill. That was a metaphorical thing, not real thing, an invisible thing. But now we have got a permanent division, a symbol of permanent division of the world for Berliners, for the East, for the West. And it was a constant reminder to the people of Berlin, both East and West, that their country was now once again in the center of another war. Okay, it wasn't a hot war, but it was definitely a cold war. And they were a pawn in the games of the superpowers. President Kennedy did then visit the West in Germany, and I spoke about this a little bit last lesson, in 1963, and he gives a lot of speeches. He goes around a 30-odd mile tour of the streets of Berlin. Apparently 1.5 million people out of the 2.5 million people that lived in West Berlin came out to see him. He spoke to a crowd of 200,000 people. Some East Berliners stood near the wall to try and hear Kennedy speak, and applauded him as well. And this is where he makes the statement, Ich bin ein Berliner. And that is where he's saying, I am a Berliner, I'm with you, I stand with you, I can't quite fight with you because of the situation in the world. You know, I can't take us to nuclear war. Spoiler, he's already done that, nearly. But I stand with you, I am a Berliner. But this is where he goes, Ich bin ein Berliner, and he's meant to just say, Ich bin Berliner. And by saying Ich bin ein Berliner, he says that he's a jam donut. Can you imagine JFK standing up? Ich bin ein Berliner. You're a jam donut? Brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. So the Berlin Wall becomes the symbol of the Cold War, that kind of heart of the Cold War, where the battles are won and lost, where a lot of the rhetoric happens. Berlin is at the center of it. A KFC donut, that's the one. So that's why Berlin is so important to our course, and this is why it's our second time we have had a crisis there. That is all the consequences there that I've done in 21 minutes. If you need any help with your work, you know that I am available. I am ringing my tutor group today. Excuse me. My last few of my tutor groups today. So if you need me and I don't reply straight away, it's probably because I'm on a phone call. But that doesn't matter. I will still help you in any way I can. On Friday, we're going to have a go at an exam question. I think that's it. Anything you need, like I said, just give me a shout. Stay safe, stay dry in this horrible weather. It's meant to be thunderstorms today, which is like my favourite. I'm so excited. I'll be well disappointed if there's no thunderstorms. I'll stop rambling. I miss you loads. I'll see you on Friday. Stay safe and see you later. Bye.